Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew, Keith Johnson.
I care for them I suppose like children.
And Alan Seiler.
I don't have a Goldicott quote, and I'll explain why in a minute when we get into the show. But hello, everyone.
Yeah,
What's
welcome. Yep. So we're going out live on Facebook and YouTube again this week. And so anyone who's watching along, feel free to comment, jump in the conversation. We'll be talking about Gul Dukat tonight. But first, Alan, we've got some Star Trek news.
We do. So first of all, we've got, and I'm bringing this up first because it literally happened chronologically first, and that is sort of, I want to do a roundup of the guests that are coming to DragonCon this year. So anyone who is listening to us in the Atlanta area and you're planning on going to DragonCon, well, this is going to be a particularly Trekky DragonCon for us. So from kind of like top to bottom, we have William Shatner, Anson Mount, so the two captains.
Wow. That's
Ethan
already
Peck.
a big deal.
Right, exactly. Ethan Peck, Jess Bush,
Seriously?
Christina Chong.
Like I'm not on the show.
Right.
I'm just some dude who wandered in talking to you guys. Really?
I'm gonna have to start all
Amazing.
over now. All right. Anthony Rapp, Wilson Cruz, Blue Del Barrio, and Ian Alexander, Michelle Hurd, Annie Wershing, who you might not recognize the name, but she was the Borg Queen in the most recent season of Picard.
Right.
Walter Koenig, Titus Welliver, who now the last two are like Trek adjacent because they have Trek appearances, but I don't know that they'll actually be doing any Trek panels or anything. Titus Welliver played Commander, I can't remember his name, in that amazing Voyager two-parter Equinox.
Yeah.
Cap-
Yeah. Good.
And
He was the first officer.
right.
The one who called B'Elanna BLT.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember his name. Max, I think, but I don't remember the last name.
Yeah, me neither.
They hardly
And-
use the last names.
That's true.
And Jennifer Morrison, who played a Kirk. I can't remember her first name in the 2009 movie.
Winona.
Yes, why not? I
Yep.
knew it was a country singer. That's all I could remember. So that is a pretty decent Star Trek. I mean, that's going to be fun. I'm so excited about this.
Yeah. They've got a great roster of Star Trek guests.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, it was announced today that we knew that September 8th was coming up, and they always do Star Trek Day on September 8th because that's the day that the original series went live back in 1966. And so there's a lot of stuff that they've announced, discussion panels with actors from all the various Paramount Plus shows. There is, and I can't remember his name, I don't have the list in front of me, but a comedian who has been in a number of shows, including Big Bang Theory. What's his name? I don't remember. They're going to be doing a cosplay beauty pageant and all kinds of stuff. And as we know, there's always some big reveal that comes out on September 8th. So I don't know why I did not remember to schedule myself off that day, but I'm already taking like a whole week off for DragonCon, and then I'm going to be missing the second half of September for medical reasons. So I mean, I can't have the entire month. So September 8th, Star Trek Day. Super excited. And of course, we will be reporting all the stuff that happened that day on the first opportunity that we get afterward.
Yeah. I mean, September 8th is a Thursday. So whether we'll be ready to talk about it that night or not, I guess we'll have to see.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, I expect I'm just going to be at my desk at work, like pretending to work and watching Star Trek news all day.
Right.
So what are we expecting? What do you think they're going to do? And what would you rather they, like, if they have a big debut or a big, like a trailer or an announcement, or what would you be hoping for?
I would think a new trailer.
Yeah.
I would think also some specific news on when Prodigy will resume its season.
Right.
I'm really expecting that's one of the things that we're going to get out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's you,
Well,
Keith?
Probably, well, like I said, a trailer, anything about Picard season 3, which has me so intrigued now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I look
totally.
forward to seeing something like that.
Yeah, that's what I expect. I'm like Alan. I'd like to see something more from Prodigy. They've been real quiet on Prodigy while they've been working on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, last year you had Lower Decks, and then you had Prodigy right after it. So
Right.
I hope that's what's happening this year. But I mean, we still don't know.
Yeah, we might be right on the cusp of another. What is it? 54-week unbroken run of episodes that we just had.
Yeah, I think it was 49 weeks, something like that, and then but it was like 53 episodes because
53. Okay,
there was a
episodes,
few
right.
overlapping weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we might be in for another full year.
Yeah.
Eric Watts says that the Dragon Con guest list doesn't beat the 2009 lineup of Shatner, Nimoy, Stewart, and Mulgrew.
Wow, that's a good lineup too.
That is a good one.
That's a lot of captains, and yeah,
right. That's a lot of heavy hitters right there.
Yeah, well, I don't think anything ever beats the year when Avery Brooks burst out singing Alamarain. That is always going to be my highlight.
Right. Yeah, you can't beat that.
Yes.
All right, Keith, did you have any This Week in Trek this week?
Yeah, I'm gonna. We didn't do a history last week, so I want to do a couple from last week that were kind of important to mention. So forgive me all if I'm just a week behind on this, but there's a couple I did want to mention because I think they're pretty significant. The first was this person was born on 7th of August, 1934.
Wow.
And this is going to be too easy. And it also does that thing where Star Trek does history of the future, or they do real life history, then they add stuff. So I'll do it. Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon, Hitler, Lee Kuan, Crotus. All are dead before me. All are dust.
Mm-hmm. I remember the quote.
Yeah. And that is?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll do another one. Gosh. I can't think of another one that's a good one.
You were so sure that we were just going to get that.
Yeah, and I know that. We just talked about that quote like 6 months ago.
His first name was Lord, or he made people call him Lord.
Garth.
That's it.
Oh, of course. Of course.
And that is, I can't pronounce the name well. It's Steve Ihnat, Ihnat, born in Czechoslovakia, who played Captain Garth / Lord Garth in, most known for that, because like so many people from that time, he was in everything, in Whom Gods Destroy. And Star Trek fans will really know him because it's so funny. It was kind of a thing that was mentioned. He was in this famous Battle of Axanar, as we all know about. He was a famous starship captain. I mean, he sounds like he's right up there with Kirk and Pike, Picard, all those. Went mad because of an accident he had. But one of the reason I wanted to mention him is, as we all know, the whole Battle of Axanar became a huge thing with the fan films and the network and all that ownership. And that, I can't remember. Do y'all remember how long that product had been worked on? Because I saw the trailer that they did at Dragon Con a few years ago. It's about 20 minutes of that. But that's like a legendary thing, right?
Well, it was a literal Battle of Axanar.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're still technically working on it. At least they're still accepting donations and producing updates and producing merch. Whether there will actually be anything produced by that studio, I guess it remains to be seen. We'll find out together. But yeah,
that's a famous one. It's also on the 7th of August, 1978, and I'll just go ahead and say it. One Cirroc Lofton.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, most known for playing Jake Sisko, and I saw something. I was listening to another podcast the other day about Star Trek, and they said literally the only healthy parent-child relationship in the history of Star Trek, and that actually may be true.
Maybe. I would say the Crushers still had a healthy relationship.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Is there anybody else? Because Worf was a horrible father to his son. There's just no way around that.
Yeah, Worf was awful. I mean, Naomi Wildman and
yes,
Ensign Wildman.
And
Man,
Although
so-
we didn't
Or-
see Ensign Wildman as much as you
Right.
saw Captain Sisko and Jake Sisko.
right.
right.
But I guess I'm thinking about the Spock and his father and Picard and his father, and boy, it goes on
Yeah.
after that. I guess Geordi had a decent relationship with his dad, but he only saw his dad for like 5 minutes. So
Right. Yeah.
Hey,
Starfleet
don't
recruits
forget.
at like family counseling centers. Hate your dad? Come join Starfleet.
Nice.
I love
Don't
it.
forget Jake, Nog, and Rom.
Well, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
That's true. And, Alan, there's something you're saying I found very interesting. I was just watching the Deep Space Nine pilot again, and speaking of father and son, was there ever a character that changed as much as Rom from when he was first introduced? Even his voice was different. He was harsh and hard and murderous.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And then later on, he became kind of goofy and lovable. What a change.
Yeah.
Okay, just got a couple of more here. And this one I really had to also mention. The 9th of August, 1963 is one Adam Nimoy
Nice.
Okay. Nice.
was born. Yeah, and I know he's been involved in a lot of stuff. Didn't he direct some episodes? I didn't look up. Didn't he do some direction? He directed some episodes of Trek, if I'm not mistaken. Matter of fact, I know he's directed episodes. And he is married to
Terry Farrell.
Terry
Farrell.
Farrell.
Right, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
One more. No, let's see. Two more. Again, back to my love of going really far back. 12th of August, 1910. If you stand there quoting rules and regulations and let your father die, I'll hate you.
That's
Jane
Amanda,
Wyatt.
but
Yep.
yeah.
Yes, Jane Wyatt, born on the 12th of August, 1910.
I was getting to the actress and I couldn't quite get there. I mean, I had Wyatt in my head. I'm like, what's her first name?
And y'all can probably tell, like, just about every Star Trek captain, I have a love of history, because when I look at stuff like that, I realize she was born 7 years after the first airplane flew with the Wright brothers. There was no electricity and running water in most of America, and nobody but a rich person owned a car. And that's just fascinating to think she goes from that to being on the science fiction show about warp drives and outer space.
Yeah.
Just an amazing. And the last one I got, 12th of August, 1921, and there's no quote here. This is just the name, and this is the man. Matt Jeffries was born. Yeah, and I don't think I realized how much Matt Jeffries had. He did design, but he worked on all 3 seasons of the original series. And I don't think I realized this, but he was listed as being over art and production design. And he did starship designs, and he helped do the show and edit the show and so forth. And he was, I mean, we all know the name from the Jeffries tubes and a couple of things he done, but I don't think I realized how pivotal he was to running that show and helping the show get produced and look the way it looked for all 3 seasons, which is amazing because so many people from the first season bailed when the second season, they were either burnout or couldn't get along with Gene, or when the series was, or the franchise was sold in the 3rd season and Fred Freeberger came in, and you got the famous arguments and dissatisfaction of people. He's one of the few who stayed on for 3 seasons, which I think is pretty cool. It might have helped make it as good as it was.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, the Enterprise design, that alone would be enough to cement him in the history books, looking at the way, science fiction up to that point had been primarily flying saucers and rockets. Just taking those familiar elements and combining them in a different way that just gave it so much more believability. It's just fantastic.
It's a genius design.
Yeah,
I mean, it literally is. It's so good. Michael Phillips comments, I just rewatched Whom Gods Destroy last week, and I think it's rather underrated. I would like to see Captain Garth come back in Strange New Worlds so we can see how he went batty.
Oh,
Michael, I do a whole lot of babbling, complaining about like fan service and callbacks and the new stuff. That is a fantastic idea, though, because I would love to see the battle of Axanar and Garth, because didn't he like get his shape-shifting powers for some weird alien race who healed him, and then he was a shapeshifter? It's a strange thing, because he went mad and then gained shape-shifting powers, and then he was a super genius who created the most powerful explosive known to man, I guess, outside of antimatter. Yeah, I'd like to see how he went from this hero captain to that.
Yeah.
I have very bad news.
What?
Apparently, Adam and Terry have separated.
Oh,
I didn't
gosh.
know that. Well,
I didn't. Yeah, me
Yeah.
neither.
That's awful. I'm so
yeah.
sad to hear
Well,
that.
Thanks for
I mean,
update.
as someone who has been married more than one time, sometimes it's awful and sometimes it's not. So
Oh,
whatever way makes them both happier, I wish them both the best.
I know, and I get that, but you
Yeah.
know, you just want to see these things work.
Yeah, that's
Right. Right. Well, and that's this week or last week in track history.
true. Awesome. All right. So if you're listening to this on the audio podcast, we're going to take a quick break right here and promote our fellow ESO Network podcast show. And when we get back, we'll be talking about Gul Dukat. So stay right there. And if you're here watching it with us live, we're going to continue on and
Here we
talk
are.
about Gul Dukat. It's Gul Dukat time, everyone.
Yes.
So yeah, Gul Dukat. Awesome.
And that's our show. Thanks for watching. Folks.
Thank you.
And
again.
then Kai Wynn, awesome. You're right. And then you can
Yeah.
be done, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, Wei Yoon.
but then you put them together, not awesome.
Oh, really?
Depends how together you're talking about.
That season 7 arc with Dukat and Wynn.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and
I
the
don't
paw
care
race
about
and all that stupidity. Oh, I hated that so much.
Yeah.
But
Right.
so here's my story.
Mhm.
I don't know how long ago it was that we said we were going to have a guest on this week, and we
Mhm.
decided on our topic, and that topic
Yep.
was going to be Gul Dukat. And
Right.
then we talked about, don't forget, we're going to be talking about Gul Dukat. And then today you messaged me and say, oh, well, you know, our guest isn't going to be there. And so I assumed we were still going to talk about Gul Dukat. That entire time, I had Garak in my head. So I am 100% prepared to talk about Garak tonight. So,
Well, Garrick is involved with Gul Dukat. So I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it's sort
Good
of they're
point.
tied in together, you know, in that
Exactly.
backstory. Yeah, it's funny to me. I mean, Khan is like the iconic Star Trek bad
Yes.
guy as far as
Yeah.
pop
Right.
culture is concerned. But Gul Dukat, we had so much more time with and so much more
Yeah.
development. I mean, from just straight up the antagonist of the show at the beginning,
Mhm.
and then sort of the midway point when the Klingon arc was going on, they really started to redeem him and make him more charming. And you think maybe he's gonna, you start siding with Gul Dukat a lot more, and then just double down on how evil Gul Dukat is.
Right. But that's, I mean, we say this or at least I say this every time that a Deep Space Nine topic comes up. That's just how well written that show is.
Yeah.
Every character goes through that kind of growth and change, and you're on their side sometimes and you're not other times. Kai Wynn is the same way.
Mhm.
I'm 100% on her side sometimes, not often, but sometimes. And that's just the sign of really good writing and a really good understanding of your characters and your story arc and really good actors.
Also, Alan, I think what you're saying there is why I increasingly find myself not using the word villain, but the word antagonist, as Charles
exactly.
said.
Exactly.
Because villain is sometimes a little two-dimensional. And you're right,
Mhm.
Gul Dukat, frankly, has admirable traits. He's a great leader.
Mhm.
He's a great fighter. And even Kira, toward the middle of the show or whatever, she was finding herself sucked into it for a while. Remember when the whole thing, when she was getting too comfortable with him? And I think about like after World War II, when we had the whole thing with the Nazis, and of course a whole bunch of Nazi generals and officers were killed, jailed, or whatever. But the United States worked with a whole lot more former Nazis than people probably realize.
Yeah.
Probably the most famous would be Werner von Braun, the father of our modern rocketry program, because you can say what they did was evil, and it was. But then at the end of the day, 10 years later, 15 years later, these people may have something that you want and you still work with them. And that's what happened with Gul Dukat, because so many times you look at this and go, this guy was a concentration camp runner, commandant, and killed people. And then they're like, okay, well, that's in the past. And boy, when you have treaties, you forgive a whole bunch of stuff. And then he potentially could have been a great leader of Cardassia, which some people thought he was. And based on what you guys were just saying, I remember too, was Ira Stephen Bear and them even said that they, toward the end of the middle of the run of the series, they were looking at Dukat and they said, hey, we're making this guy too likable, almost too noble. And so then they went back and said, let's remind everybody and ourselves that he's really at the end of the day an evil guy, mostly evil, not all evil.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
and it's only evil when, of course, every Star Trek show, every show
Mhm.
is centered around what we, the American or Western audience, think of as moral. So anything
Right.
that deviates from that is seen as quote unquote evil.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
Gul Dukat is not evil in his own context.
Mhm.
Right.
He is doing what Cardassians do, and he's doing it for the most part exceptionally well. It's only when that viewpoint comes into conflict with our viewpoint.
Mhm.
And since our viewpoint is the one that wins, well, that makes him the bad guy.
Right. And he's gonna look out for himself. Ultimately, he's a
Yeah.
very self-serving character. I mean,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that scene in Way of the Warrior when Cisco calls Cardassia and Gul Dukat answers, and he's like, "I was trying to get this civilian government." He was like, "You succeeded."
Right.
And he's like, you saw which way the wind was blowing and switched sides.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna look out for himself, and he's gonna do what's really in his own best interest.
I think
Yeah.
what's super interesting is that just like Dukat isn't necessarily, when you're talking about black and white, he's not necessarily a black character.
Mm.
Neither, and this sounds so weird, but neither is Cisco like that 100% good character. You know what?
Right.
So they
Right.
both really exist in that middle shade of gray. And it's so interesting to see them pitted against each other. I think they are amazing foils for each other.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I find interesting is for a lot of Star Trek fans, Mark Alamo would probably be remembered as playing Gul Marset in the TNG episode.
Nobody remembers that.
Oh, really? I remember that.
No.
I remember his cool hat.
Once they're reminded of that, then
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's right. He did play somebody before Dukat.
And didn't he have a beard?
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
like little
Facial
side
hair.
beard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they decided not to do the facial hair, but he was commanding the screen in that episode as well. And that was called that was the Wounded with Captain Maxwell.
Right.
The guy who was basically still fighting the Earth Cardassian War.
Right.
And what's so funny now for somebody like me who has been watching television since the 60s, I remember Mark Alamo my gosh, everything from Police Story to Police Squad to Mannix he was one of those actors. He's 80 years old now. And his first TV credit goes back to 1970. And he was in a 2-year soap opera called Somerset that I remember. And he was in a real life TV show about the trial of American military officer called the Execution of Private Slovik. But the thing is, what's so funny is I saw Mark Alamo for decades. And if you turn on any of the cop shows at that time or something, and there was like some bad guy, or those things where what's the joke that every time anybody goes into a bar, there's a bar fight. He would be like the guy leading the bad guys that starts the bar fight. And so you get used to seeing him as that kind of character. And then he strides onto the set of TNG, and wow, this guy, like you guys were just saying, this guy can really act, not just playing bad guy in regular television. And then from that one performance, they liked him enough, they decided to bring him back, which you don't see as much nowadays in Star Trek as back in the day when people played dual roles. And then I think the first time, like what you said, Alan, I agree with the first time he walked on screen, his chemistry with Brooks was just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, just amazing.
Yeah. But don't forget his other appearance.
What's that?
It's equally as memorable as Gul Marset. He was in that poker game in Time's Arrow when Data's was it Time's Arrow? When they're in the past and he has to deal in and the Native American calls him paleface and all that kind of stuff. That's him with no makeup.
And before that, he was in the neutral zone. He played the Romulan commander.
That's right.
That's right.
So it's funny now. That's all the way back season 1 of Next Gen when the first episode they reintroduced the Romulans.
Yeah.
Knowing what he's capable of on DS9, they could have continued that character on Next Gen. He could have become like Tomalak and become a reoccurring foil for Picard.
Right.
But they didn't go that way. But I mean, it might have been interesting if they had.
He's practically the Jeffrey Combs of Next Generation.
Well, I mean, I'm glad now though that it was DS9 where he really got the chance to shine and recur, and it just shows the power of not killing your characters at the end of the season. That's something I've just criticized the new Star Treks for, is that just when an antagonist will get interesting, they kill him off at the end of the year. Like, keep them alive so they can become the next Gul Dukat.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Agreed.
And you're right, Alan. I like what you guys are saying about the whole thing with Tomalak and stuff because TNG really didn't have a lot of. I mean, I guess really the most recurring antagonist was Q,
Yeah.
and then you're right,
Mhm.
Tomalak would show up every now and then, and
Yeah.
I think,
Rarely, but yeah.
yeah, very rarely. And I think the only other person I can think about in science fiction that's probably close to him would be Walter Koenig as Alfred Bester in Babylon
Haha.
5, which is
I,
another, ironically, one of the best antagonists I've ever seen in science fiction. Now,
yeah.
Walter Koenig was only on B5 for something like 7 to 11 episodes. I forget the exact count. But to what you're saying, Charles, I was checking IMDb, and Mark Alamo is credited with 35 appearances in DS9,
Wow.
And
which
that's
is a
so
lot.
funny because that's 35 episodes spread over 7 years. And his
Yeah.
impact is so much more significant that when you think 35 episodes, that's nothing.
Hmm.
That's just slightly over one season.
Yeah.
But yet, his impact on that show is so profound.
Mm.
Oh,
Absolutely.
And how many of those 35 episodes was he in Bajoran makeup making out with Kai Wynn?
thank you. Because
You know,
there
like,
was a lot of those.
That's a solid chunk of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
that's very true.
Wow.
Yeah. What we were talking about whether or not he's a villain or an antagonist. And you say he has a lot of good traits about him. What, at the end of the day, do y'all feel about Dukat? I mean, would you say he's the best antagonist in Star Trek history? Or does that still go to Khan? As if those are the only two options. I mean, you could
Right.
obviously Borg Queen. I mean, it's like I just decided these are the only two to talk
You
about.
have two choices.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say as far as a recurring antagonist. Now,
Mhm.
I don't know that. I mean, I love Khan. I'm not gonna lie about that. But I love that you get to follow Gul Dukat through this whole storyline.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that he's from the beginning of the show all the way up to the end of the show.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The difference with Khan is that you really only get 2 appearances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're completely separated by 20 years, and it's not a completely different take on the character, but it's portraying the character from 2 completely different platforms.
Mhm.
Whereas Gul Dukat, you see that progression over time, and I'm gonna say I think he absolutely does get my vote as the best antagonist in Star Trek. Now, Q obviously is up there, but I just
Yeah.
don't, I just don't put the precocious trickster in the same category as a war criminal,
Yeah.
as someone who ran, well, I was going to say an internment camp. It was essentially an internment planet.
Hmm.
It's just not the same thing. And the fact that the writers and the actor took that character and gave him so many different shades. It wasn't just an evil character. I think he is absolutely the best quote unquote villain that Star Trek has ever done. Ongoing villain.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't argue with that.
No.
And I think one of the things when you said also, Alan, with that we're all saying that he doesn't believe of himself as evil.
Right.
Yeah, I remember growing up when I remember in the X-Men, the biggest group that the X-Men battled was called the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and in the DC comics, there's a whole universe, an alternate universe called where Superman and his Justice League people are members of the Injustice Society.
Yeah.
And in real life, nobody names themselves stuff like that. Nobody names themselves the evil, the Legion of Doom. Well, Legion of Doom's okay, but nobody names themselves that. And the reason I'm saying that is because, and Alan, you mentioned the other great character was Garrick. Is early on in Deep Space Nine, and I don't have episodes named, Garrick has had cold conversations about why it was right and proper,
Yeah.
and even beneficial for the Cardassians to rule Bajor, the
Right.
the Bajorans, because it was what conquerors have said throughout history, which is basically, we're better than you, we're superior to you, and this is for your good. You're
Yeah,
basically like children.
Yeah.
And so if you just say that Dukat is quote unquote evil all along, well, basically every Cardassian that we get to know in that series, from Garrick to Dumar to all the other ones who are complicit in this, they're all kind of evil. And then you see the character arcs where some of them, like Garrick, become, I guess, redeemable, and Damar and so forth.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
he really was just a part of his system. And one of the things I find very interesting is they talk about the fact that the Cardassians at one point in time had a culture that was a culture of peace and exploration and art and science. And basically, they found themselves weak, remade themselves as strong. And after that, they had that whole only the strong survive kind of thing. And so what he did was what you said earlier, Alan, I agree with, by his morals and by his people's morals and by Garrick's morals and everybody else's morals, what he did was right.
Right.
By their morals.
Yeah. He is the Cardassian's Cardassian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Chuck, who's your favorite villain or antagonist in all of Trek?
That's a tough one, right?
Well, recurring, I would say Gul Dukat.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I love Ricardo Montalban's performance as Khan.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's great. It's famous and iconic for a reason. But we got, like you said, we got him twice.
Yeah.
You know, whereas Gul Dukat, you get to watch over a 7-year period.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they give Mark Lamos some really good material, not always, but generally some really good material to work with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That opening 6 episodes of season 6, where they are occupying Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
And it ends with Damar shooting his daughter.
Yeah.
Holy shoot. I'm censoring myself. That is some of the like best television I have ever seen. I found that gripping, that whole arc.
God, I mean, backing up just a little bit from that, but the season 5 finale, when he re-enters his office, what used to be his office, and the baseball's there.
Yes.
And he's like, it's a message. He'll be back.
That's right.
And that's a great place to leave it. You know, it's right. I mean, I love, I mean, every time you see him with that baseball after that, you know, it made the baseball a part of the story, but it sort of, that's that tie between Dukat and Sisko, man. You know, those two are just great characters together. And, you know, I was a little bit conflicted watching the show because after Gul Dukat got all paw-wraithed and killed Dax, and then I really wanted to see Worf kill Dukat, but you can't have Worf kill Dukat. You know, that's Sisko's job, but it would have been very satisfying to see Worf kill Dukat.
Yes, it would have. Yes, it would.
Yeah.
There's I forgive me because I don't have episodes names, but gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. But do you remember the episode where they triggered this weird computer program that Dukat had written in case there was a rebellion, insurrection on the station? Yep. And what's so funny about it is, you know, you remember as they were trying to, as O'Brien and Sisko and them are trying to disable the system. I mean, it's intentionally, it's continually bringing in like gas and all this kind of stuff because the computer has been programmed to think that the Bajorans have revolted. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it's not an AI interactively doing a message. And the jokes people laugh about, it's like Dukat recorded 100 different messages. That's pretty much like Bajoran workers. Because of this, I'm going to do this. Because of this, I'm going to do this. And you think about this guy sat down and recorded all these scenario messages for killing. And because one of the things that they talk about is Bajorans love to hear them. Cardassians love to hear themselves talk because they don't want to just kill you. They want to convert you. They want you to feel that you should be punished. And so he recorded these incredibly long-winded messages where he could have just killed them because he has to teach them. Mm-hmm. I just love that episode.
I love the bit where he shows up and he was like, I got a distress signal from myself.
Right.
That is awesome. Great scene. I don't remember the quote, but it's in that 6 episode arc at the beginning of season 6, where he's talking to Weyoun and they're talking about victory or whatever. And I don't remember the quote, and I wish I'd looked it up before I got here. But it's victory is not necessarily winning. Victory is making your opponent understand that they should never have opposed you in the first place.
Right.
It's all about that mind game for them. It's all about convincing them that you are right. It's not just about beating them because they're wrong. They have to understand that you are right.
Right.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Alan, you're right, because I remember that because
just like a Cardassian.
Yes, because Weyoun was saying, they were talking, Weyoun, and they were saying, if there's to be resistance, it will start and be centered on Earth. And he said, right. And then Wayun just casually says, therefore, we should eradicate the population of Earth, basically destroy Earth. And to what you said, Alan, then Ducat's like, no, wait, you can't destroy Earth. And Wayne's like, why not? It's logical because he said, because we have to make them realize that they were wrong to oppose us.
Right.
And then
right.
and Wayne's like, and then can we destroy the Earth?
And then he kind of goes, okay. Oh, and then, that's good stuff.
And that dovetails with the couple of episodes we saw, like when Miles O'Brien was on trial in the Cardassian courts, which again shows that's how the Cardassian legal system, if you remember, and I won't call name, well, there's some countries, like Russia, the Cardassian legal system, if you're arrested, you're guilty. And remember, they said the verdict is always guilty because the verdict is not about proving that you're guilty. The verdict is about proving that the state is always right, and it's making you confess. What you said, Alan, dovetails exactly with that's how Cardassians think. Ducat wants everybody, his enemies, his victims, to love him and know that he's right, and that's how the Cardassians are about everything. The system is right always.
Yeah, because they feel like what's best for the state is best for Cardassia. And so, the trial is not about the individual. It's about the state. It's about showing that everyone, we're still safe. Our system still works. Justice is served in Swift.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So with Gul Dukat, it basically you breaks down. You have original Gul Dukat for the first like four seasons, and then you have sort of midway through the show Gul Dukat where he's on the outs from Cardassia, and then he becomes sort of a renegade on his own, and then he becomes the head of Cardassia under the Dominion. Yeah, and then at the end you got crazy Dukat, after Zial dies and he just goes over the deep end,
right?
Yeah,
and it just gets crazier as it goes on. So I mean, which Dukat do you prefer? Do you have a preference?
The season 6 Dukat.
Okay.
Where he has ridden through all these ups and downs and he is back on top. And buddy, he is riding that horse like he belongs on it.
Yeah.
Like he has been restored to his rightful office. He's so good.
Well,
so good.
Alan, the thing is, you're right, because again, you hate to say it, but he's admiral. Because remember, he was completely on the outs with the Cardassian government. After all, this man had sired a part Bajoran, part Cardassian child, which ruined his reputation. And if you remember, he was at a place where some people wouldn't recover. He had basically absconded with a Klingon bird of prey and a ragtag crew. And then he turns himself into a successful marauder. You might call him freedom fighter, kind of, sort of, because he's always self-serving. You're right. And then like a year or two later, he's back.
Yep.
And a lot of people wouldn't recover from that, but he sure did.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I also love it when he's right there as the head of Cardassia. We've got Wayun right there with him as he's and having to deal with that dynamic between the Dominion and doing what's best for Cardassia. I also love original Dukat, where he was just the sort of ongoing face of Cardassia to who would show up.
Absolutely.
I don't care much for crazy Dukat as much.
No.
I feel like he got a little nuts, and then he became a Paw Wraith cultist, and then he turned into a Cardassian and was banging Kai Wynn. Yeah, I just I prefer Dukat when he's at his strength.
Exactly. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Alan.
I was gonna say there's a lot that I really love about season 7, but that plot line bugged the snot out of me. I just did not like it.
Yeah.
Both for his character and for Wynn. I didn't like either of them in that role. I thought that she is way too smart and way too conniving to have been taken in by that.
Yeah,
I just didn't buy it. Did not buy it.
Yeah, that was the Clark Kent. That was the Clark Kent scenario. You got this really thin, long neck guy with that voice, that stride, and nobody could tell. Like, hey, you look like, Gul Dukat. I think I agree with y'all. I agree with you, Al. I'm more into. I agree with the early Dukat in the season 6, and I would say the only crazy Dukat performances I like are when he went mad after when the when the Dominion fleet didn't come through the wormhole and he lost his mind. And you remember Cisco literally found him as a quivering in a corner saying, I forgive you. And he's talking to Ziyal saying he forgives her even though she's dead. And then he looks at Cisco. And I'll never forget this because it's weird because he's piteous and he's broken. But then he looks at Cisco and it's not complete defeat. There's like some
there's
strength there. Remember that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And he says, I forgive you too. And he hands him the baseball bat. And then the only other thing is, I always get these two mixed up, is the episode where he and Cisco crash on the planet and he tries to make Cisco acknowledge his greatness. Was that duet or waltz? I always get those. Waltz. That is a phenomenal show.
Yeah.
Love that show because he has to play crazy. And then because he's the whole time he's hearing Kira, the vision of Kira is mocking him. And Avery Brooks, this is something that a lot of characters don't want to play because like William Shatner would not have played a character like this back in the day. Avery Brooks is completely at the mercy of Dukat. And it still has one of the most brutal scenes in all the Trek is when Dukat beats Cisco with a pipe or something like that. And Cisco is completely helpless. And the acting for a man as strong as Avery Brooks to play helpless like that. And for Mark Alamo to, like you guys are saying, balance the crazy. But then at the end of that show, at least, he looked like he had a strength and a spine of steel. And it, like I said, I didn't know he was going to end up like a crazy cultist and all that kind of stuff. But that Dukat who took off at the end of that episode, I was really into. Then, like I said, he went nuts and changed his appearance and all that kind of stuff.
Before we move any further, I want to get a comment from Michael Phillips, who wants to weigh in on the favorite villain. Can't decide between Gul Madred and Lore. That's two good choices.
Yeah.
Gul Madred was an amazing character.
Yeah, he was, and just incredible performance. And then Lore is another one of those where I'm always surprised when I find out how few episodes he was in.
Right.
You feel like Lore's popping up all the time, but he really wasn't.
Exactly. So what?
All right, go ahead.
Talk about season 7. I mean, we just did a little bit, but about that whole thing of that weird rabbit hole that Dukat goes to the point of having extreme surgical alterations done to him to look like a Bajoran. Necessary, unnecessary, didn't like it, liked it. Good points, bad points.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. I mean, I don't mind it really. It's if I was gonna watch a Gul Dukat episode, it wouldn't be one of those, you know. But I mean, and I've speculated this on the show before. I don't know that this is true, but my thought was maybe he was like, I can't come back for 7 episodes in this makeup. I've been doing this makeup too long. You know what I mean? Like,
that's
I'll
very
come back.
likely. Yeah.
And they said, okay, we'll come up with something with no makeup. You know what I mean?
That's
or
right.
limited makeup. Now that, I mean, he maybe that's not true at all. I'm just making this up. But I mean, it makes sense, you know?
Right.
Because I can't imagine it. I mean, I guess they did, but I mean, you're sitting around the writer's room and you're like, you know what? All right, how about this? Gul Dukat becomes a Bajoran and he has a thing with Kai Wynn.
I know.
Like, really?
That's right. It does sound like one of those crazy things that would just get thrown out for fun. And they're like, well, wait a minute, what about?
I think they got I think they managed to hold it together, but you're right. I think that the center was almost threatening to fly apart because at the end of the day, Deep Space Nine was a show about religion and spirituality, and it started that way. And I think they realized they wanted to end it that way, which is why, like you said, he became a Pa Wraith, and Kai Wynn became basically a servant of the devil, or the other side, if you want to call it that.
Right.
But I agree with you. I think in trying to make this return to like a God versus the devil thing, they went a little far because, like you said, when the whole thing where he had a cult on the space station and got the lady pregnant and everybody was just kind of, I wasn't really buying that because that was too far afield. Now he's like Jim Jones or something.
That was a funny scene though. It's a miracle.
Oh God, yeah.
And her husband did not buy it at all.
Right.
It's a miracle.
But it went a little far afield for me at that point in time because I just still wanted to see I wanted to see maybe Dukat slightly unhinged, but still that dangerous military leader, not that Dukat who became like a psycho hippie Charles Manson kind of thing. That just didn't work for me. Although I did like, I don't want to say like, but it's a dramatic scene. I do remember the scene when he killed Dax And the thing we keep talking about Ducat is you never loved Ducat, but you kind of see the other side. Is when he killed Dax, he literally said, "I didn't mean any harm to you." It's like, my God,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? Like, well, if you hadn't been here, you wouldn't be dead. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Which is
basically.
good. Wow.
Well, I mean, how about Ducat and Garrick?
Yes.
Man, that's a whole show right there.
I know. I loved their dynamic.
Oh, they were
absolutely.
great.
Way of the Warrior when they were having to fight side by side, and I mean, I just love those two. And Ducat is featured heavily in the book, in
Okay.
Stitch in Time.
A Stitch in Time. Yeah.
Okay.
It goes into their whole backstory together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love those two characters together.
Oh yeah.
Charles, is the backstory correct? Is it that Garrick had Ducat's father executed? Is that right? Is that what starts the animosity between them?
Yeah, I haven't read the book in a long time, but yeah, I mean they had history going back to like being schoolboys.
Wow. I didn't know it was that far back. Yeah, I think I read when I was doing some research last night, it's that Garrick in his his days with the Obsidian Order, Garrick somehow had Ducat's father branded a traitor, and he felt that he was responsible for his father being executed as a traitor. And so, they've hated each other for a long time. And that scene you're talking about, I'll never forget, that's another great scene where you have to admire Ducat's abilities, if not the man, because when they're fighting side by side, Ducat's wielding a batlet, and he's really good. And you can tell. And I like the thing because later on, I remember, I forget who Garrick was talking to. I remember he said when they were fighting side by side, he said something like, the thought had crossed my mind to shoot him in the back. And I forget who he was talking to. And they were like, you would shoot a man in the back? And he's like, well, it's the best time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Before we forget real quick, and I want to say this, I know I'm rambling on here. Here's one thing about Ducat. Ducat, and this for me is kind of personal because it kind of parallels, well, for a lot of people, for Jewish people, for Black people in America, it parallels some stuff in real life. Ducat, we see, forced himself on women. And that's really disturbing. It's really disturbing. And we found out with Kira's mother, that he ended up forcing Kira's mother to become what back when the Japanese invaded China was called the comfort woman. She was basically prostituting herself with him so her family could get some food.
Yep.
And one of the really disturbing things is when Kira, who'd gone back in time through the orbs, you hear the soldiers basically saying, "Oh, here he goes running his game again." Because what he did was he always let one of his men go into these women who had just been taken as part of the conquest and scare them. And then he would stride in and say, "Oh, don't do them like that."
Of course.
And he'd run a game. And so it's very disgusting because at the end of the day, he was, let's just say he was basically sexually assaulting women. And that happened all the time with Nazis. That happened in American slavery. I don't know if they write a character quite like that nowadays in 35 episodes. Because it's extremely uncomfortable. And when I look at that Ducat, it's like, how could I have anything approaching admiration for him? But you know what we said? That's real life. And it should make you feel that uncomfortable. It should make me feel that icky about his character.
Yeah. And I mean, even in a situation where a Bajoran woman acted like it was consensual, I mean, he's leading the enslavement of her planet. There's a significant power imbalance there.
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't care much for the Ducat relationships at all. Like with women. I mean, I like Ducat when he's leading a fleet or going toe to toe with Cisco.
Exactly.
I never cared much for the whole storyline with Kira's mom. I thought that was weird. And,
I thought that storyline was strange. It was forced. They could have done somebody else to put that point across. Yeah.
But it doesn't make the impact as having Kira's mother. Come on.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, what about the relationship between he and Kira?
Yeah.
The dynamic that they have for the 7 years. I think it's such a potent relationship.
Yeah, I do really. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I do really like when she's on the Klingon bird of prey and she's helping them, and he keeps acting like they're gonna be friends. They're gonna be more than friends. You know what I mean? And Kira doesn't have it. She's not having that.
There is a showdown between the two of them. I think it's in the 5th episode of season 6,
Okay.
where she comes into Cisco's office and he's there, and they just have this like verbal spar with each other, and it is fiery.
Yes.
And it's not like angry. It's not she's being defensive or anything. It's that they have this sort of like verbal dance with each other. And it is incredibly well written and really well played.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite Kira moments in the whole series.
Yeah, because he is forever trying to win her respect and maybe her love. And then again, back to the creepy stuff. Remember he did the weird thing where he bought a dress for her, and then to your point, Alan, around that time she rejected him. She's like, "What do you think is going to happen here?" And she even says that, "What do you think is going to happen here? We're going to all get together and play some kind of family." And then does one of the creepiest things again I've ever seen in Star Trek. He takes the dress that he had gotten for Kira to try to woo her and gives it to his daughter and pretends like he bought it for her or had it replicated for her. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, just disgusting. And Alan, you're talking about relationships. Also think about how his daughter Zial was introduced. He was headed to kill her.
Yep.
Because she was a product of an indiscretion that was going to hurt his career.
That's
and it was Kira who stopped him from killing his own daughter.
That's right.
Which is absolutely insane. And then Kira said she was going to kill him if he tried to kill his daughter.
That's right. Now I want to go back and watch the entire 7 years again.
I know.
Yeah.
Do I have time tonight to get that done?
We'll pause it.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Right. Well, let me ask y'all, because it's funny. We're actually approaching an hour. We all agree that the crazy, mad Colt Dukat wasn't our favorite. Do you like, however, the resolution at the very end of the entire series with Dukat? And I guess we have to say Dukat, Cisco, and Wynn. I felt Wynn got short shrift, but do y'all like how it ended with Dukat and Cisco?
In the
that
fire
battle?
caves?
Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, I like that they're mano a mano. I don't really care much for the paw wraiths. I think that was going a little far with the religion thing. I think something like the Dominion is a better like evil versus good than the they're the fire ones, you know what I mean? And the fire caves, and it's like it's a little too like the devil, you know, a little too demonic. I think that's a little on the nose, and I don't really care for the not really. I thought that storyline got a little bit weird at the end. I much prefer like the season 6 Dukat and Cisco dynamic.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Anytime she started chanting from a book and the number of times that she would say Costamogen, I was like, please stop. Please stop. So in that last run up, there was like a 10 episode arc basically at the end of season 7. And their storyline pretty much carried through all of them, but there was one episode right in the middle. What's the title of it? Anyway, but it basically centered on Kira and Damar, and they're on the stolen ship, and they're coming in. They're going to blow some stuff up and blah, blah, blah. The Ketracel White mines or some shit. I don't know. Or some stuff. Sorry. And that was so good. And it was so much better because it wasn't diluted with the Pa Wraith nonsense.
Right.
I just thought they leaned too heavily on the Pa Wraith thing and tried to really build it up into something meaningful and interesting. And it just never worked for me. The whole liberation of Cardassia, the whole Cardassia was once the conqueror. Now they are the conquered, and they basically invited their conquerors in. Is so powerful.
Absolutely.
That they didn't need the other stuff. They didn't need the Pa Wraith nonsense.
So do you think it would have been better if it had been Dukat rather than Damar that continued that storyline through season 7? If Dukat had continued in his position with Wayun and then become the revolutionary?
That's a really good question.
Staying for Cardassia and leading the revolution.
That's a really good question.
Because Damar basically they sort of stepped into Dukat's shoes.
Exactly. And I think when you're thinking of a story arc for 7 years and you're thinking about a character who goes from one point at the beginning to a completely different point at the end, having it carry through with Dukat the whole way would have been real. I mean, it was powerful as it was.
Yeah.
But I think having that carry through with Dukat would have been the way to go with that, and work Damar into it some other way, some new way, something
The
that
Coast
really
Emojin.
gives. No.
What's very interesting, Charles, is you were asked the question just before I was going to ask it, and I was going to ask it very slightly differently.
Okay.
I love what happened with Damar.
Oh,
I
yeah.
actually love that he
100%.
became the guy, and I prefer it. But the question I was going to ask is, if Ducat had remained on Cardassia, do you think he would have finally rebelled against the founders? Because I think he's plotting all the time. Because you remember every time they'd be in meetings, and he would say, when he'd be in meetings with Wei-Yun, and he would say, "I think this," and the Wei-Yun would say, "You will do what the founders say. You serve at the pleasure of the founders." And he would say, "Yes, I serve at the pleasure of the founders." And if you remember
Yeah.
Damar, there's one great episode where Damar actually says, "I'd like to push that founder. I'd like to push that little border out the airlock," and his founder with them.
Yep.
And Descartes just laughs and said, "Maybe I'll let you do that someday." So you get the feeling he was plotting, and maybe he told himself he would be able to resist the Dominion. But do you think he would have tried?
He was biding his time.
Yeah.
He was waiting for his opportunity. He was using them just as much as they were using him.
Right.
Only he never got to the upper hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ducat had no allegiance to the Dominion or no loyalty to them.
No.
Yeah.
So I
They
think
were
we
an
take
expediency.
right.
They were the mechanics to help him get his position back and to help Cardassia get its position in the quadrant back.
Right. So you think at some point in time he would have tried to have freed Cardassia from the Dominion?
It might have played out differently than what it did with Damar. I think Damar's intent was purer in a way than Ducat's would have been.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I just wondered if, again, for those who have not seen Babylon 5, I apologize, and this is a Babylon 5 spoiler, but why am I blanking on his name? Not goodness gracious. Londo.
Yeah.
Londo. From the
I was just gonna start
Centauri.
naming names and eventually I'll get to it.
Londo for the Centauri was like Ducat in a lot of ways, where he was self-serving, and he kind of sort of, well, he always loved his people, so in some ways he was more like Damar, but he had a horrible story, because the beings that were the shadows and the beings that served the shadows, once the Shadow War was over and the shadows left the galaxy, their servants were still around. And Londo had a very unhappy future, because he was literally and physically controlled by shadow servants for the other next 20 years of his life. And he came to a really sad end, because all his machinations basically bounced back on him. So I sometimes wonder, is if you guys are saying, if Ducat had stayed, would he have been a sad guy in the future? Would there have been a way even out of that? I don't know. But interesting what he would have ended up as.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost at time. Any closing thoughts about Gul Dukat?
Wow.
In case anyone was worried we wouldn't be able to fill an hour talking about Gul Dukat.
Yeah. Go for it, Alan.
Oh, shoot. I don't know, man. I mean, just one of the richest characters that Star Trek ever devised.
Absolutely. I agree. The stuff like the stuff with the thing he did with the women and stuff, he's reprehensible. I don't like him. I like him, but I don't like the being he was. You can't take your eyes off of that character, and that's a character you like. You don't want to look at him, but he holds your attention. That's a great character.
Yeah, when you love to watch a character and you hate that character at the same time, that's a great character.
That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now next week we're back to Lower Decks. We've got Star Trek on again. The summer is coming to an end.
Looking forward.
Yes, Trekkie New Year. We're gonna have another year of Star Trek, it looks like. So if you've been watching and listening over the course of the summer, you may have noticed that we've been changing some things up, trying some things, sometimes going out on weird days, sometimes 3 episodes in a week. It's been madness.
It's crazy.
We're squeezing all kinds of stuff in that we wanted to try out. I think sort of what we've come to is that we want to continue going live on Thursdays. At 8 o'clock, talking about the new episode each week. So watch the episode and then come join us for the live discussion on Facebook and YouTube, and you can jump in the conversation and join in. And then we're going to try to have the episodes out Friday instead of waiting until Monday to get the episodes out. So it'll be a little less editing, because we're sort of turning these episodes around a little bit faster. But if you haven't noticed any difference in the last few weeks, then you may not ever notice any difference. But yeah,
We're
so
such professionals. We don't even need editing.
that's right. That's right. But so if you miss us Thursday, you're driving to work Friday, you can listen and to us talking about our discussion topic and the latest episode of Lower Decks. And then if anyone has been listening over the course of the summer and has feedback, what worked for you, what doesn't work for you, let us know. And if we like your suggestion, we'll listen to it. And if not, we'll ignore it.
Wow.
All right, Alan, where can people find more of you?
Okay, well, I have a small publishing company called Cosmic Press, and you can find that at cosmicpress.com, KOZMIC press.com. That sounds like a Mickey Mouse theme song. And I have another podcast on the ESO network. It is called Modern Musicology. And we talk about different music topics every week. We just did one on great artist, bad album. And it ended up being a lot of fun. And everybody should subscribe and get on board, because in a few weeks, we have an interview with a legendary rock icon from the 80s. So
awesome. And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on the standard social media groups: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Okay. And then Veronica and I can be found at feltnerdy.com or Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
You did the arm thing.
I got a score. She's gone this week.
You can't say it without the arm thing.
That's right. Yeah. And our latest episode, we just sort of told all of our stories about traveling to Fab Fest in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we had a lot of fun there. It's a really fun episode. So check that out. And then we've got some more episodes coming up here soon. That'll be a lot of fun as well.
Awesome.
But Veronica's not here this week. She's off at camp. So does anyone have a closing?
Oh, see, now when you say that and we are like completely caught off guard and put on the spot, it means something when it's Veronica and she knows to expect it every week after 84 weeks of doing it.
Right.
Hang on, let me find okay, it's a Ducat quote. Victory was in our grasp. That's it.
Perfect.
Love it. Love it.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
See you around. Take care. Let's see how long it takes for this.